Good morning, everybody. I have the honor and privilege to introduce Chris Gearing here. Chris Gearing is an author, educator, coach, and mom of twins. She blends expertise, empathy, and humor with over 30 years of experience to meet parents where they are and help them become the parent they want to be. In addition to a master's degree in early childhood special education, she's collaborated with renowned figures in neuroscience and parenting, and her insights have been featured in publications such as the Wall Street Journal and Huffington Post. Welcome, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to be here today. I hope you can all hear me okay. My voice is a little bit soft, so if you can't hear me, just give me a shout out. So we all made it today. I just want to congratulate all of you because I have twins and I know how hard it is to actually get somewhere when you have little ones at home. So just turn to somebody next to you, give like a little fist bump and just be like, way to go, you made it. You made it, good job. Real quick, I just want to check in with everybody. Has anybody here ever had to deal with a tantrum or a meltdown? Yeah. Anybody have to deal with, your kids just they can't get their backpack organized, they can't seem to understand what it was you told them to do? That ever happened to you? Are these super pleasant experiences for you? Would you like a little bit of, different way to do stuff? All right, you're in the right place. You're absolutely in the right place. Brian did a short introduction of me, thank you so much. But I always like to give a little bit more of a peek inside. So these are my kids when they were 3. They are so cute when they were 3. These are my kids when they were 14. They're still really cute. They're just taller than I am, right? This is like credential stuff and background, etc. But there's more to the story. And I always like to share with people kind of why I chose to do this, which is kind of a weird profession, to go around and talk and write books about children. So part of what has happened for me is about 20 years ago, I really wanted to go from being a teacher to being a mom. And unfortunately for our family, that meant 5 years of lots of fertility treatments and surgeries and not fun stuff. But at the end of it, I got pregnant and it was great and I had twins. Surprise, they were 7.5 pounds each. So they were really big, really healthy babies. It was fantastic for them, not so great for my body. There were some changes that happened, and I actually couldn't walk. I was, my pelvis twisted, I was in a wheelchair, I was in a tremendous amount of pain, had to learn how to re-walk. It was like a whole big thing, right? So I had this moment when I was sitting down and I knew that I had to stand back up, and I was not looking forward to it because I knew it was going to hurt. And as I was looking down, I saw this huge belly. I can't even describe how big that thing was. And then I just wrapped my arms around it, and I just held on. And all I could think at that moment was, I am never going to hold my babies this close again in my life. I am never going to have this moment again. And I just sat there for a minute, and it's been 15 years, and I still get a little bit teary when I think about it because it was a really important moment. And what I realized right then was that, okay, this is parenting. This is it. For the rest of my life, I have accepted that there's going to be challenges and there's going to be pain. And I have choices that I can make. And what I want to do is I want to choose to lean into that love and that connection that I have with these amazing people, however your children came into your life. How blessed are we that we get to be their parents? So now what I do is I take all the education and the background and I combine it with my experience as a mom, and I really love to work with other parents and sort of help you look at whatever challenges it is that you're having from a little bit different perspective and help them lean into that love and that connection and really come at things from a different perspective and do some real problem solving. So that is a little bit about my background. Let's come into today. So today we've got 3 main points that we're going to cover. We're going to talk, first of all, about self-regulation. And self-regulation in children is actually built upon co-regulation with adults. There's a lot of brain science behind that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. It's my favorite thing, actually. I've got a couple books on it. We're also going to talk about how parents can actually help shape their kids' executive functions. You can't push it, you can't make it happen, we'll talk about that too, but we have a lot that we can do. We have power we don't even realize. And finally, we're going to talk about how self-regulated parents actually make really much better choices in the moment. And if your kid is going to borrow your brain, you want it to be a regulated brain. So taking care of yourself is really important. So those are the three main points. The first thing I want to talk about is the next time you have a challenge that comes up, and the phrase that goes through your head might be, "Ugh, what is wrong with my kid?" Or, "Ugh, I can't handle this anymore." Or sometimes it's, "Ugh, what's wrong with me? Why am I such a terrible parent?" Right? All of those are old scripts that run in our heads. I want to interrupt those scripts, and I want you to have a new phrase. The next time you have a challenge with your kid, I want you to say to yourself, "Oh, my kid needs to borrow my brain." And I want you all to say it out loud. Say it with me. My kid needs to borrow my brain. One more time. My kid needs to borrow my brain, right? So we talked about you guys deal with tantrums and meltdowns. They're not so enjoyable. I also want to say that and this is important, tantrums are an important, normal, typical part of development, right? As an early interventionist, if I'm talking to a family and they say, "Oh no, my kid's never had a tantrum," then I'm going to ask a lot more questions, right? I'm going to listen a lot more deeply, because that's not what I expect. It's not typical development. Also, tantrums kind of suck. They're not fun at all for anybody involved. Unfortunately, one of the things that can happen based on our own history or the things that we were taught when we were growing up is when we are dealing with tantrums from our kids, a lot of the ways we automatically do that is with shaming or punishing. And when you shame or punish something that is developmentally appropriate, if you do it on a regular basis, there can be some damage that comes from that. And it's not intended, but it can be pretty extreme sometimes, depending on what's going on. So that's one of the reasons that I like to talk about this stuff, is to give you some different ways to approach it and understand why your kid's doing that and why these different things can be really helpful. So we're going to talk about what to do, how to do it, and why. Does that sound all right?
Yep.
All right. I'm old, so I have paper. I also want to say that I'm going to introduce a few tools and ideas to you. These aren't just things that I sat around and I was like, "Oh, I read about this and it's really cool," or "Oh, I think that would work." No, this is stuff I've used, I swear, I promise. I've used them as a teacher, I've used them as a mom, and they all can work really, really well. And I also want to say, when you use it as a parent, it's different. It's different. Because as a parent, I have got to watch my kids go from this to this. And they've got these self-regulation tools that I've been using since they were this little. My kids are teenagers. They just came back from a school trip where they went overseas for 2 weeks. They didn't have one meltdown. They didn't have one tantrum. The teachers talked to me when they came back, and they were like, "Yeah, there was a couple times we could see they were really tired. They were really overwhelmed. It was a loud environment. And your kid just stopped and they breathed, or they did one of these other tools that we've been working on for years, and they pulled it back together." So the tools that we help our kids learn when they're really little are tools that they keep with them for the rest of their lives. And it's really beautiful as a parent to watch that growth. So I hope that I can give that to all of you today. All right. We're going to talk about tantrums, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to prevent tantrums. But the one question parents always have for me is, when my kid is in a tantrum in the middle of Safeway, in the middle of the cereal aisle, and they are screaming, "What do I do?" I hear you. That's not an example from my own life at all. So remembering that self-regulation is built on co-regulation, I have this 3-point system. 3-point system, super easy to remember. You're gonna stop, sink, and soothe. Easy to remember, stop, sink, soothe. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna stop talking. And this goes against everything that parents think, right? When your kid is like freaking out, you always want to talk about, what's the matter? What's wrong? Why are you doing this? What's happening? What's going on? All right. This is not going to work very well. Instead of talking, we want to offer empathic silence. And I want to take a moment. Can anybody tell me what is the most common thing I hear when kids are losing it? Like, what do parents say? And teachers?
Stop.
Stop? What else do they say? I hear this from teachers a lot, actually. Use your words.
Oh.
Use your words. Anybody heard that one? Why aren't you using your tools? We spent all last week learning SEL tools. Why aren't you learning? Why aren't you using your tools? Right? This is what we say. This does not work because of brains, right? This is a model of typical brain development from the ages of 5 to around 20 years of age. Up here, way up high, is this front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. Brain science is not really super exact right now. We're learning a lot more. It's a really cool and exciting field. So we can't say exactly what region of the brain does exactly this for most things, but we do know that the front part of the brain that's in charge of your words and your way of talking to other people, etc., it doesn't develop for a really long time. And the latest estimates are really, it's not all nice and purple and blue and connected until your mid to late 20s. Which means all that stupid stuff you did as a teenager, you're fine. Just your brain wasn't baked yet, it's okay. But when we're talking to our kids and they're in a tantrum, this is important for a couple of reasons. One is, they're having a hard time anyway. Dan Siegel calls this part of the brain the upstairs brain. And the upstairs brain, first of all, in little children, it's really not built. It's like maybe a framework, but there's no plumbing, there's no electricity. The downstairs brain, which keeps you alive, that's up and running. No worries about that. When your kid is, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but when your kid is trying to process information and they're in a stress response, they're already little, language is already hard, and then when you add more words, you're actually increasing their cognitive burden. So when you say, use your words, they can't. It's not that they're being stubborn. It's not that they're being obstinate. They are being human. And they cannot in that moment. And it's not just kids. I have an example from my own life as a grown-up. When I was a grown-up, I lived in Japan for about 4 years. I wasn't fluent, but I was conversational. I could talk to people. This is a very long story I'm going to make very short, but I got stuck on top of a mountain in a snowstorm by myself. I didn't know how to read Japanese very well. It was this brain not done moment. So, I'm on top of a mountain. It's a snowstorm. I need help. So I found a phone. I called my hotel. I told them what was happening. Hung up the phone. Sat there for a minute, not knowing what to do. The phone rings. I'm like, okay. I'm in the middle of a train station that I've just broken the glass to get into and get to a phone. I pick it up and I say, moshi moshi, because that's how you say hello in Japanese. And then this other person on the other end just goes, oh, and I was like, hello. And in that moment, there's no way I could have spoken Japanese to anybody, right? I had the words. I knew how to talk to somebody, but there was no way I could access those because this stress part of my brain was in charge. So I'm curious, have any of you ever been in a situation where you were so stressed out that you just went, and didn't have words? Okay. So the next time you are with a kid who's really losing it, if you can just take a beat and you can think to yourself, oh, they really, really need help right now, right? They're not using their words because they can't. So instead of talking, we're going to offer empathic silence. We got two situations here. Here's the first scenario, and this is the second scenario. So the first scenario, just take a moment. Imagine you're an upset child. You're in the middle of the cereal aisle. Everything's really tall. It's terrifying. And I look at you. Why are you doing this? Come on, why aren't you using your words? Come on, there's a whole bunch of people that are around right now. I want you to tell me what's wrong. Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you upset? Tell me how you're feeling right now. Why aren't you using your words? Now I want you to stop and talk to somebody at your table about if that helped you regulate. I'm guessing it was a lot of no's. Now we're going to go to this scenario. Same thing. You're a kid, you're in the cereal aisle, you're losing it. And I look at you and I go, oh, honey. Yeah. Okay, now to talk to each other. How did that feel as opposed to the other? Fantastic. The energy was so much more positive there. So I'm guessing that this felt a little bit more comforting, right? And not so stimulating. So you're going to keep that in mind. That's the first part. Step one is to stop. Stop talking and offer empathic silence. The next is sync. And English is great because I get to use both syncs. You're going to sink down and you're going to sync up, right? Here's what I mean. The first thing is you're going to sink down and get your kid's point of view. Because you're in the middle of the cereal aisle and you get down there and you look up. Oh, wow. It looks different when you're down here. If your kid is losing it in the middle of the night and you go in and you lie on their bed and you look up and you realize that clown that you bought them is really not cute. You have no idea how terrifying that thing actually was. So sinking down and getting their point of view and understanding what the world is like from their perspective is really important. But equally important is you want to sync up with your child, right? You want to kind of tune into their emotions. Have you guys ever seen that movie, The Incredibles? Right? It's really popular with kids. There's this scene where the mom is feeding the baby and she's going, no. And her family's like, Mom, stop making weird faces. And she's like, I'm not making weird faces, right? That's a great example of something called mirroring in psychology. When you are looking at someone and you're trying to kind of see how they feel, therapists use this all the time. You're going to imitate their facial expression. You're not mocking them. You're not aping them. You're not making fun of them. You're trying to get your face kind of into the same expression that your kid has, and that gives you information on how they're feeling. So you can kind of see it with this mom right here. The kid's going like this, and the mom's like this, right? It can be happy, kind of syncing up or mirroring with your kid. Sometimes it's a little bit more sad, right? If you can give an expression to your child that kind of matches where they are, there's this magical moment when your kid's going to feel really seen. Have you ever felt really seen by somebody? Just think about the kind of relationship you have with that person who sees you, and if you can build that with your kid. Soothe. You're going to tap into your own sense of calm. You're going to show your child what calm is, and then you're going to share it with them. And what do we mean by that? Going back to brains. So we talked about how language takes a long time to develop, right? And you don't want to add more words to your kid because they already have struggling with words, just like I did in that sentence. So what you want to do is also keep in mind that that part of the brain up here stores your emotional regulation, your self-regulation. Self-regulation is actually a skill in a suite of skills called executive function skills. I bet you've heard that. It's such a buzz phrase right now. Do you guys know about executive functions? If you don't, we're going to talk about them a lot because I love them. One of my favorites. The thing is, self-regulation is a skill. It's in this part of the brain. This part of the brain is not developed in very young children. That means not only can they not access that part of their brain, because the upstairs and the downstairs brain, they don't communicate when you're stressed out. It's just not developed yet. So you got to keep that in mind. My kid's not calming themselves down. They're not using their tool because they honestly can't do it yet. Which means you say to yourself, everybody all together, my kid needs to borrow my brain. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. One more time. My kid needs to borrow my brain. Yes, your kid needs to borrow your brain, right? They need your calmness. And that means we're going to talk about mirror neurons. Ooh, I like the science. Anybody here familiar with mirror neurons? It's really cool. It's kind of new-ish, the last not so many years. I love this picture. Have you guys ever been in a dance class and the teacher has done like one of these things and then you just, as you're watching, you start to do what the teacher's doing? And you don't really have to think about it too much, right? Like you might think, oh, my foot needs to go this way, but your body starts to imitate what that person is doing. That's because of your mirror neuron network system. So it's really cool. Here's what we think. We are pretty sure the mirror neuron network system has a lot to do with learning and how we learn. Mimicry is a really, really important part of that. There's another sort of extension of the theory that talks about how emotions are part of what we're learning. And it's actually evolutionary, and it has to do with survival. So here's my favorite example. Okay, we're back in the cave people days, and you have Ugg, and then you have baby Grug. And Ugg is outside the cave, and Ugg is looking very confident and watching. And baby Grug is like looking at Ugg and crawling around and licking stuff and doing what babies do to explore the world. And then Ugg goes, and baby Grug sees that. What does baby Grug do? Does baby Grug keep licking and exploring stuff? No. Baby Grug goes, and then baby Grug goes and they hide behind Ugg because something is wrong. If your parent is scared or worried or concerned, as a child, you're going to be scared or worried or concerned because that is a safety mechanism. You look to your adult to protect you. So the idea is our kids are so tuned into us emotionally because it keeps them safe. Right? Larry Cohen calls this the second chicken phenomenon, which I'll talk to you about in his book at another time, but it's fantastic. When your kid is that tuned in to how you're feeling, this is why you've heard everybody say like, oh, if you're angry and you're not talking about it, your kids know you're angry. Like if you're having a fight with your spouse. They probably do. Your kids are so tuned into you. They're going to pick up on every emotion that you're having. And that's fantastic because that means you can use it to your advantage. If you know, oh, my kid is going to pick up on whatever I'm feeling, okay, well, I'm a grown-up and my brain is pretty connected, so I'm going to calm myself down. I'm going to breathe or do a mantra or do a grounding or whatever it is that you do, count to 10. Calm myself down, and then my kid is going to tune into that. I'm going to show them how to calm down. I'm going to show them what calm looks like, and I'm going to extend that to them. And that's going to help. And that's pretty much the only thing in a tantrum that's going to help your child actually process all of those big feelings that they're having. This is not a magic wand. It is not a button. It doesn't end tantrums immediately, but it can really help. A little bit more about mirror neurons, just in your own brains. Look at this picture. How are you feeling when you look at this picture? Yeah, and like tune into like, ooh, what's my body doing? What's your heart rate doing? I can't look at it anymore. All right. But then you look at this picture. See? This isn't even a human. It's just another mammal. But we all are like, ooh, right? That's your mirror neuron network system kicking in. Your kid has the exact same thing going on with them. All right. We want to remember, my kid needs to borrow my brain, and self-regulation is built on co-regulation. Does that all make sense? Any questions about that piece of it? All right, now we're going to get to our hands-on portion of this session today. We're going to make magic wands, and I have all the materials up here, but I'm going to demonstrate first how to make a magic wand. This is very complicated. Make sure you're all paying attention. I like to do the most difficult possible things when I'm in front of a lot of people on camera. You're going to take a feather, and you're going to take a stick. And then you're going to take some tape. You're going to tape the feather to the stick. Very complicated. And you're done. That's the magic wand. Why is this magical? I will show you. If you take a deep breath in through your nose, and then you let it out and you make the feathers dance, if you do that 3 times in a row, you start to feel better. I do want to say one quick thing about this or any tool. I do not recommend using this during a tantrum. I strongly recommend you do not pull this out in a tantrum and go, okay, we're going to use our tool. Because of all that stuff we just talked about, right? What you're going to do is you're going to introduce this at a time when you're both feeling calm, you're both feeling connected, you're having a good time, right? And then you're going to say, oh, I learned this really cool thing. Do you want to make a magic wand? And then we can practice. And you're going to see if you guys are really queued up together, you're going to ask those 3 questions. I made them a little bit simpler on your page. Basically, you're going to look at your kid and say, what's my kid's body doing right now? You're going to check in with yourself, what's my body doing right now? And then you're going to be like, okay, what's this value between us? If you're really stressed out, this is not the time to do this. If your kid is really stressed out, not the time to do it. I'm going to tell you something. I'm saying you won't introduce this when your kid is having a tantrum, but at some point in time, if you use these tools regularly and practice when you're feeling connected, your kid will use them. I have seen this. I used to do something with my kids called cuddle meditation, where they would come over and listen to my heart. Until they were 12. When they got upset, Mommy, I'm gonna listen to your heart, I'm gonna listen to your heart. And I would be, oh, okay. And I would ground myself, make myself really calm, and they would run over and they would put their head on my chest. They had to bend down a little bit to do it. And they would listen to my heart. And they would co-regulate with me. This is not something I said, you have to do this. This is something that they had been taught from the time they were very young, and they knew they could use this to calm themselves down. That is how you know this stuff is working. And magic wands are great. You can put them in your car, you can put them in a diaper bag, glove box. Like, I had somebody use these at a doctor's appointment once, because the doctor said, take a deep breath, and the mom pulled this thing out. And the doctor was like, that's amazing. So, we're gonna pass these out. All right, would you mind helping me? My very complicated craft project, smack in the middle of a presentation. Don't you love it? Could we be more hands-on? Probably could, but it'd be messy. And then once you have your magic wand, let's all practice with it. Everybody take a nice deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and let the feather dance. Another deep breath in and out. See, don't you feel a lot more centered? I love magic wand. So these are the tools you can teach your child that can help prevent those meltdowns and tantrums. The second idea has to do with executive functions and how they can be shaped by the guidance of parents. So what are executive functions? I mentioned this earlier. This is also in your packet, right? There are 12, well, let me say it this way. There's a lot of different ways to look at executive functions, and there's different models out there, and there's not one that everyone is like, these are executive functions. I chose the model that has 12 because I feel like it really helps parents understand there's a lot of stuff that is growing in your kid's brain. There's a lot of skills that they're not choosing not to do. They just haven't quite developed that skill yet, right? So really quickly, the 12 skills, if you look in your packet, they're all also listed. Task initiation, impulse control. Think about your kid and you'll be like, oh yeah, they don't have any of these. If you have a 3-year-old, they don't got them yet. Working memory, focus, planning and priorities, organization. Some of us have still not developed that. Goal setting, persistence, emotional regulation, told you it was in there. Time management, self-observation, and flexible thinking. So these are all skills that your child develops over time. We can't make them suddenly have good time management skills. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But we can support it. And how can we support executive functioning skills? At a Montessori school, y'all are going to be so excited about this. Chores. I am such a huge believer in chores. Chores are fantastic. Chores are a great way to build these 3 things. Chores can build connections between children and their parents. Chores can build connections between children, siblings. There was a situation, my daughter broke her ankle like a year ago, and her brother did all of her chores for the entire summer, and I did not ask him to. He just knew she couldn't do it, so he stepped up. That was amazing, and a real show of love through service. Chores can build self-confidence and actually feelings of self-worth, right? Oh, wow, you're doing this thing because it really helps, right? You're not just doing the dishes because I said so. You're doing the dishes because when you do the dishes, it keeps vermin out of the house and it keeps everybody healthy. When you're doing dishes, you're keeping us healthy. Thank you. Really, thank you. And when your kid feels that from you, wow, I'm contributing. I'm making a difference. My work is meaningful. And that's how you teach your kids this inherent dignity in doing work, is connecting with them and helping them understand why it's important. But what we're really going to talk about today is executive functions, because those are cool. All right. I'm going to break this down into some examples. This looks like a crazy complicated slide. I get that. I just want to put it up here because laundry, I think, is a really good way to kind of break things down. So I know that there's a lot of questions out there, chore charts. One of the things I see on the internet a lot is, what chores are appropriate for a 3-year-old? What chores are appropriate for a 6-year-old? Not my style, because I think all the chores are appropriate for all of the ages, from, not infants. Let's be reasonable. But age 3 or so on. What I like to think about is not, can my child do laundry? But what parts of laundry can my child do? And this is where they're going to borrow your brain, because you're going to use your executive functions, or actually you're going to borrow my brain, because I already did this for you, and you're going to break that down into steps. Not everybody does their laundry the same way. This is how it worked in my house. I broke it down into these 10 steps. When you're thinking about the different steps, you also have to think about, well, what's involved in doing that, right? So if you want your kid to empty the bin into the washing machine, they need to be able to reach the top if it's a top load. If your kid's too small, then that's going to be a barrier. It's not they can't do it, it's just they need a little help. So you break it down, and you think, oh, what can my kid do? What can they not do? What can they do with a little bit of help, right? If they can't reach the top of the washing machine with my own kids, I had a step stool, and I put it in the laundry room. I showed them where it was. I showed them how to open it, move it, and then they would push it over and open the machine. When they couldn't read yet, because they started doing laundry when they were 3, what I would do is put stickers on the washing machine so they knew which buttons to push or how to adjust the dials and controls. You can also, this is like a little pro tip, you can start laundry in reverse. So having a kid take clothes out of the dryer, even really small kids can help with that. So you can almost do these steps in reverse in a lot of ways, thinking about how to match it up to what your child can do. By the way, my kids have been doing their own laundry, start to finish, since they were 7. I do not look in their closet because I don't need to own everything, but they do it on their own. The other thing you can do is start to realize how much executive function is built into each of the chores that you're having your child do. So for laundry, and like I said, everybody's house is different, but I figure with laundry, my kids know, okay, task initiation. I gotta get started. I gotta get started because I need clean clothes for tomorrow, and then I know that the washing machine takes about an hour, and then it takes about 45 minutes to dry, and then it takes I've done this so many times, another half an hour to fold and put away my clothes. Oh, then you're into time management. Then your kid's starting to learn how to break chores down into small chunks of time. They're learning how to plan and prioritize. Oh, I know that tomorrow I've got that big debate, or I know tomorrow I've got that talk that I'm doing. I need to have this particular outfit. I'll wash that load first, right? Organization. Well, if I'm gonna put my socks here, and my undies here, and my shirts go here, that's all organization. And then self-observation. Did they do it correctly? When they went to school the next day, did they get feedback that they smelled bad because they didn't use soap? These things happen in real life. So all of these are executive function skills. These are baked into the chores that you do every day. And I think a lot of times we don't even realize it. So it's really cool. I find it very exciting. If your kid is a little bit shorter than another kid in that class, how many of you would look at your kid and say, you just need to grow faster? Come on, put some effort into it. I need you to try. You need to be taller, and you need to be taller by tomorrow. No, we don't do that, right? Because we know that's not how it works. But we forget when it comes to the brain stuff, that is also how it works. And when we get upset or angry, when we have a 6-year-old who can't organize their backpack or can't remember what they're supposed to take to school, it's the same thing as getting mad at them because they're not tall enough. They just need time to grow those skills. We can support them, we can give them opportunities, but we can't force them into these skills. That's a really important piece. I think it gets skipped quite a bit. We're going to talk about the third piece of things, and that is how self-regulation really does start with you. And when you are calm and connected, you're going to make a lot better decisions in the moment. You're going to be able to remember all the stuff we just talked about. Your upstairs and downstairs brains will be connected. But that means if you do not take care of yourself, you will not be able to help your kid. Taking care of you is taking care of your child. And I know that self-care is like a buzzword, and everyone's like, oh, I need a mani-pedi, and that's my self-care. I'm like, maybe. Everybody's different. But there's a whole lot of things that count as self-care. Brushing your teeth is self-care. Going to the doctor, taking your medication, going to see your therapist, talking to friends. All of these things are like core self-care. And they are really, really important. And I will say, I did not sleep for 4 years when my children were born. And that was not okay. And if I could talk to me back then, I would be like, you need to sleep. The self-care piece is really important, and a lot of parents forget that the parent piece of parenting is actually really fundamental. If you want your kid to borrow your brain, that means your brain and its container need to be healthy. You've got to take care of yourself. And that's how you teach your kid how to take care of themselves. Right? We always wish all the best things for our kids, and we forget that we can wish good things for us too, and it still benefits our kids. Okay, so big ideas of the day. Let your kid borrow your brain, right? Let that be your phrase. My kid needs to borrow my brain. My kid needs to borrow my brain. My kid needs to borrow my brain. It could be a mantra. It could be a song. It could be a little dance. Whatever you need to do. Remember that. Remember that your kids are going to borrow your brain for like a really long time. Really, really long time. At least another 20 years probably. And maybe longer. So the good thing is they need to borrow your brain less as they get older. And then at some point it switches, and I can see me borrowing my kid's brain at some point in time. All of this does actually feed into kind of a larger system of gentle parenting and gentle parenting techniques. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I do work with parents because I really believe that this stuff is important. I think it makes a difference. And one of the reasons I think it makes a difference has to do with a story of one family I worked with, where there was a dad, and we'll just say he had not had the most gentle of upbringings. He had a lot of challenges. And he'd read about this gentle parenting stuff, he really wanted it to work, but honestly, no one had ever been gentle with him, and he didn't know how to do it. So I worked with him for a while, and it was incredibly rewarding to see how prideful and happy and joyful he was when he would say to me, my kids started doing that my kids using the magic wand, my kids taking deep breaths. But then he would say, oh, you know what, Chris? I started using the magic wand. I'm taking deep breaths, right? And he was able to calm himself, and once he learned how to do that, then his kid started doing those things even more often. And it was this powerful moment because I thought, all right, well, I can't change this dad's past, but together the two of us just changed his kid's future. Think for a moment how powerful that is. So that's why I do this. As I mentioned earlier, I work with families one-on-one. I'm going to start working with families in small groups in January. I really love you guys, and I am so happy you invited me to this school. I want to offer a free session to everybody here. So if you are interested, it's 30 to 60 minutes. You are welcome. If you follow this QR code, there's a little feedback form that helps me make these talks better and better each time. But there's also a way on there that you can get on my calendar. And there's no obligation, I'm not a high-pressure salesperson by any means. But you are invited if you are interested in doing that, and I'd be happy to talk with you and see if I can help you. The goal of the session is we sort of set your goals. We see sort of where you are, where you want to be. One of the things I always like to ask parents is, in 20 years when your kid is giving their wedding speech, what would you like them to say about you? And I think when we think in that long term about the connection and relationship, it can really make a